My guest this week on Contributions is Kevin Kramer. Kevin and I go way back. We first met in 2000, early 2000s, when he was a product manager, one of the product managers of the Razor's Edge at Blackboard. And I was just starting out here at iATS the first time round. And so we've known each other a long time. He is so incredibly knowledgeable about this sector. He's passionate about it. He is, not only has he been serving the sector through technology for longer than I have, but he's also, a donor, a volunteer. He does some wonderful things for charities, and he really lives and breathes the sector like many of us. So I have no doubt that you're going to enjoy the conversation as much as I did. It's always great to catch up with Kevin. We've always got so much to talk about, and I hope you enjoy it.
Kevin, it's great to see you.
Andrew, great to see you. Glad to be here.
How are you? You're looking good.
I'm doing well. We're keeping busy here in Charleston, South Carolina, and keep on moving.
And the family's well. Has the heat hit yet?
No, actually, we're in the low 60s this morning, which was absolutely beautiful. So we haven't gotten the high heat, but it's a coming. It's inevitable here in Charleston.
It's inevitable. I was saying in the intro how you and I have known each other. You were one of the first sort of connections, friends I made in the space when I first joined iATS back in 2003. I think you and I spoke in 2004, and you'd been there already. You'd been at Blackboard for a while before then. So you've been in the nonprofit tech sector for over 20 years. I think everyone would be fascinated to hear your journey. So if you could just share with us, that'd be great.
Yeah, I feel old when I say that I've been in the sector for 20 plus years, because that also says I've been around for a while. And so I've heard all these nice terms of, oh, your experience and this and that. Yeah, I've been in and around the space for a long time. And absolutely love it. Found my way into nonprofits. I think from a young age, I've always been involved with community and always wanted to help. And my career path, just sort of by luck, brought me here to Charleston, South Carolina. And I, wanted to stay here and found a few different jobs, met some friends through soccer, of all things. And there was a company here in town that was in the nonprofit sector, had some friends over there that recruited me. And when I heard what they did, and this was Blackboard, but when I heard that they served nonprofit organizations, knew that would be a good fit for me. And so I sort of found my way there, joined as, a salesperson early on, learned my craft in the fundraising side on what was then Razor's Edge 6 and the first of Razor's Edge 7, sort of migrated into product management, where that was everything from, that's really where I learned the business across the board, because we got into marketing, we got into product development, we got into, really getting into customer needs and stories and understanding folks at that level. Had the luck of, at that point in time, that's just when digital was coming on board. And so I was involved with a lot of the early digital products that Blackboard was putting out with what was then Net Community and those types of things. What was the online?
Net Solutions.
Net Solutions, yes. Yeah. And that's where we crossed paths.
That's right.
But, back in the day, having a donation page that it didn't matter what it looked like was like, that was ahead of the curve. That was earth-shattering stuff. But yeah, I sort of went from there back into account management, managed a number of national organizations, Habitat for Humanity, YMCA, Make-A-Wish were primarily my brands. And that sort of took me to the end of my Blackboard career. Jumped over to Omatic Software, which is a systems integrator in the nonprofit space, which, we got involved with, hundreds of technologies to do integration. And so that just expanded my network beyond just that one ecosystem, and sort of seeing all of this technology that was out there serving the space was really compelling. And then most recently jumped over to Team Virtua and have been there since last November. So sort of a synopsis of things, but I've run the partnership program over at Virtua and still have, again, through that role, a very diversified and sort of wide-reaching network of folks that serve in this space. And, when you talk about change, one of the things that jumps out to me is just the number of folks that are in here serving the nonprofit sector. It's a booming business, and there's pros and cons to that. But, innovation and just having a need out there for people to serve, you see specialists in the space. What came up with peer-to-peer and DIY events, and now you have live stream fundraising. People need to build technology to support that. And there's lots of options these days, where when I started, there were a couple of players. Now there's a lot of options, and that's a good thing in my mind for the nonprofit sector. Yeah,
absolutely. Choice is always a good thing, and I want to talk about it in a minute. But I'd love to also get your perspective on organizations, nonprofits themselves. Have you seen their needs and their requirements and their desires change as it relates to technology over the years?
Yeah, I think a couple of things there. One, you have the folks that are really early adopters of technology that are really trying to move the needle and be the disruptors on the early curve, and then you have folks that sort of come along a little bit later, and then you have the ones that are really in the tail end. I think what's been interesting most recently is when you think about your daily experience, your phone, what you have access to, has changed the donor experience in a way to where their expectations are different, and organizations are having to adapt to that. And what I mean by that is when you go to Amazon or your Netflix or anywhere, it's hyper personalized. There's a sort of an expectation that comes from that. When you think about a donor journey, and we've always said this in stewardship, you need to make sure that they feel heard. You need to make sure that they feel like who they are, because they're important. They're supporting your cause. Fast forward to where we are now, the expectation of hyper personalization is everywhere. And so from what's changed and how organizations have had to adapt, especially when it comes to technology, leveraging that in a way where they can give that donor experience, that type of donor journey and that type of experience is something that's really, I think that we've seen that across the sector. If you're not doing those things, it becomes really apparent, because everything I do on my computer, everything I do on my phone is telling me, hey, I know who you are. You're important to me. If you're not giving that experience, it really stands out. So I think that's been a really big change over the last, 3, 4, 5 years for sure.
Yeah. And the pace of innovation and the pace, are you still seeing that a lot of the really great innovation and creativity is actually coming from the customers that are demanding the solutions, as well as coming from the technology providers? How are you seeing the birth of that innovation and creativity?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because, you see things bubble up, and it's, I was going through just preparing for this conversation, and it was interesting. And one of the things that happened back when I was in product management, so this would have been mid 2000s, my boss, Jay at the time, said, hey, there's this new thing I want you to go check out. It's called Facebook. We want to know how it's going to impact the nonprofit space and fundraising. And at the time, think about that. You would have thought, there's no way this is going to have an impact on fundraising.
Right.
At all. Unless you were really looking 10 years out and crystal ball. But think about where they are now. They had people, they have eyeballs, people have adapted to that. And now it's raising a lot of money. Live stream fundraising, same kind of thing. And so to me, I think there's a couple of things there. There's technology advancement and innovation that's happening outside of the sector at a much faster clip. What I see is that nonprofits are going to have to look at that and adapt that quicker. And I think that's where we're getting to, even with the personalization of communication. And, think about donor pages. We mentioned Net Solutions. there was no way to change that experience when I got to that landing page. Now, if the landing page itself has impact on the donation experience, people will drop off quickly if it's not up to snuff and where it feels really good. You can further personalize that as an example. Like that's available today. And if you're not doing those things, it has impact on your bottom line. It has impact on your fundraising, which has impact on your mission. And so I think what's happening is innovation isn't always within the sector, but it's being adapted at a quicker pace, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And I've kind of, you and I have spoken about this before, and I think it's also a responsibility of the providers to the sector to educate and to share what is working, what isn't working, to help organizations prioritize, because we know that organizations they don't have resources just waiting around to do things. They are incredibly overworked and under-resourced for the most part in generalization.
100%.
So then how do we do that, and how do we prioritize? And I think it's our responsibility to at least inform that to some degree. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. And one of the things that I noted in my notes around the fact that the nonprofit sector is now a big business. There are some companies that serve the nonprofit sector that have this genuine, we want the sector to be successful. We want to increase generosity as a grander scale of the GDP, and because it's going to drive better things to happen in the world. Not everybody is like that, which is unfortunate, but for those of us that are, I think we take that seriously. A lot of that comes from thought leadership, education opportunities, supporting organizations like AFP that are doing things in the community around those educational opportunities. The other piece, and I noted this in my notes as well, which is part of the technology advancement. You think about what's happened over the last year. Now virtual, what we're doing right now is like, this is it. This is the norm.
Yeah.
That's opened up a lot of educational opportunities. And there was always like virtual learning before, but we've had the privilege to be involved with local AFP chapters over the last year as part of the, hey, we have this technology, like we do this stuff all the time. Why don't we make it available to you? You guys can run some, sessions, some webinars. And now people that might not normally come to an in-person session have accessibility to learn about how other organizations might be adapting technology, or how they're doing things that are more modern, or, that becomes really compelling from how you get folks, again, up to speed, or get them over the hump of like, oh, I could do this at my organization to adapt technology. And I've seen that as outside of what we're doing on the software side or on the technology as a provider, that piece alone has opened up so much opportunity for sharing in the space. And I think it's awesome. I mean, we had a session, we had a summit this week, not to plug it, we had a summit this week, and we had over 2,400 registrants for our summit over 2 days. And I was blown away when we started the summit, and people were, hey, I'm signing in from, and it was all over the world. I mean, all over the world, UK, Asia, we had Jamaica, we had Canada. It was unbelievable. We would never be able to.
You had Vancouver, Kevin.
Vancouver. I said Canada.
It is, and you're not plugging. I was going to ask you. That was one of my questions. I wanted to say. And first of all, kudos to you, man. On Friday, after all of this week that you had, you still come on this show. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. You must be exhausted.
I love it.
But your comment is really interesting, because you're right. I mean, it's almost as though there's been a democratization in two elements. One, which is now, it's not about which organizations can afford to send people to a conference in, San Francisco or, wherever it is to do fundraising training. It's about, well, how can you deliver that knowledge, and how can you just across as a broader distance as possible? And that accessibility is fantastic.
right?
And then another comment that I wanted to, question I had for you, which is about accessibility of technology. Because again, when you and I started, the profile of investment was very different than it is now. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, that's a great comment. I'll comment really quickly on the accessibility of information. The other piece that we have is that all of that content is now recorded and available on demand at such a large, it's somewhat daunting of like, how do you tap into the right information? But the point is that it has been democratized, and getting accessibility to learn is like no other time that we've been around. I mean, it's amazing on that front. From the accessibility of technology, gosh, yeah, we were still on like discs. We were shipping out CDs back in the day. Think about that. Like that's mind blowing. That's how we used to send. So we physically would send discs that had to be loaded locally. Now we're all SaaS based, web based. You can access from anywhere. That you have a connection. I can get on my phone and do my work there. It's amazing. And from a cost perspective, I think the piece, and we hit on this earlier, when there's competition in the market and there's options and choices, you find options and choices all over that spectrum, right? From the startups that don't have any resources. I mean, there's free options out there now. You could start fundraising online without dropping a dime, and that's a wonderful thing. And from an accessibility perspective, the other piece, and especially over the last year, I've seen more and more organizations that have a dispersed staffing group, right? People that there was an organization out of New York, and they had 100% of their staff in New York, and then COVID hit, and folks didn't want to be in New York anymore. And I was talking with somebody in Florida. I was like, "Oh, how's New York?" She's like, "I don't live in New York." I said, "But this is an arts and cultural theater in New York." She's like, "But I live in Florida. It's okay. I can do this from here." That's amazing. So, and you think about the talent that you could get. I don't have to look in my backyard. I could get somebody in Vancouver to come work for an organization in Charleston, as an example.
Yeah, that's right. And I do want to touch upon the work that you're doing at Virtua. So first of all, I am going to add some information. I'll post some links to the resources because, you really do have some fantastic resources available on your site. And so definitely want to do that. But I'd love to hear about some of the great stuff that Virtuous is doing right now, because of course, Saturday Night over the last couple of days was fascinating. It'd be great for you to share that.
Yeah. And I'm still relatively new over here at Team Virtua, so a little bit of outside eyes still coming in. But a lot of folks ask me why I changed and shifted and joined the team. And I met the team from Virtuous 2 years ago at a conference, had the chance to talk with their leadership and our CEO and founder, and was just enamored. I mean, he gets the nonprofit space. He walked away from that meeting, and my colleague and I looked at each other and said, he gets it. He understands the space, and he's vested in it. And it's always stuck with me. But some of the things we're doing is really around trying to modernize that experience, that whole concept of personalization at every angle, at scale, which is really important, especially for smaller organizations, to think about personalizing communication and making sure you're treating your donors in a way that they feel heard, they feel known, is really important, and that drives us. And the other piece that's outside of the technology, what drives our company, is impacting global generosity. That doesn't mean impacting global generosity only through Virtuous. It's something we're bought into as the sector. And so a lot of our content is put together for that. So in the resources, I think you'll see that. But from a technology perspective, that's what drives us. The user experience, it's meant to be simple. It's meant to be adaptable. People should be able to use it right off the bat. And it should be doing meaningful things. And so we're really sort of driven by that. Much of our team and staff come from the nonprofit sector. We love it. We're vested in it. We want to see our customers succeed. And that's, I think we're doing that. That's driving our innovation And so, yeah, it's exciting times too in the sector.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. You know, I listened to a podcast a few months ago, and what they were saying is, you know, there's two approaches to growing a business. You know, one approach is to see it as a scarce market and try to, you know, win and compete and win against as many different competitors out there. And then the second way is what you're saying, which is look, let's take an approach to make the whole sector more successful, more, you know, richer, having the best technologies. You know, a rising tide lifts all boats. And with that methodology, going back to what you said, the first thing, which is, you know, folks like us that have been in here a long time, and it's encouraging to see there are a lot of folks like us that have been here for a while. We tend to have that attitude, which is if we can find ways for our organizations, our charities, and the nonprofit sector in general to grow, then everyone is going to benefit. I think it seems to be it was certainly the right approach for the sector, and it seems to work for both our organizations at least.
Right. Yeah, and I think, you know, I think nonprofit organizations know that, feel it, sense it, just from a relationship perspective. I mean, that gets into, you know, how you support your customers, and, you know, when they talk to your staff, you know, what kind of, they have understanding of the sector. I mean, it's important. And you know, one thing and I'll share this as well, when I was interviewing for Virtua, and I was talking with our CEO, Gabe, and I was just, you know, asked him a question about what's really driving you just at a personal level. And he got into this, you know, the global generosity. He says, you know what gets me up in the morning? I want to see the percentage of fundraising, you know, to the GDP grow. It's been very sort of stagnant for a long time. And even though the dollars are going up, the percentage has been very, very small. And if we make an incremental change in that by 2%, that's an amazing feat. And think about all the good that would happen if that occurs like that. And the piece that really hit home, he said, because nonprofit organizations deserve that. They deserve better. And that's sort of what drives us from a tech perspective, is that how can we fit into that picture and allow organizations to succeed in that way?
Oh, so, I love it. I could talk about this for you know me, I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, but that is the greatest place to end off on. So I'm going to end there, but I'm going to just finish on 6. So, you know the drill. We're going to go run through them really, really. This is going to be difficult for you because I know it's like it's in the background. You know, you're displaying your love of music. So I have no doubt this is brutal for you.
Yeah.
So let's go. First, least favorite app on your phone.
Oh, least favorite. I thought it was my favorite.
No, your least favorite.
Least favorite. I'm going to have to say Facebook.
Okay. Favorite song?
This was a hard one. You're only going to give me one?
All right, I'll give you 2.
I'll give you one.
Okay.
I will say it's People Get Ready. Are you familiar with it? Yeah.
By?
I think originally it was a Curtis Mayfield tune.
Okay.
But then it's been covered by lots of people.
Lots of people. Okay. People Get Ready. Favorite movie?
I'm going to go with Hoosiers.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
If you could live in one place other than where you live in Charleston, where would it be?
I took this to be out of the country just for fun. So Copenhagen.
Oh, wow. Good choice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah. The first nonprofit that ever resonated with you that you can remember?
Yeah, Food Kitchen in Atlantic City, New Jersey. I don't know the name of it, but my aunt Mimi ran that, and we used to, as she would let us come and help serve there, and so I have memories of that I will never forget, for sure.
My team are going to get mad at me because I'm only supposed to ask the 6, but I have to say, you get involved in some fantastic charities personally, and I know you're involved with the MUSC stuff. Can you just quickly talk about that, because I think that's fantastic?
Yeah, happy to. And that's another one I could talk about all day. And that's People Get Ready. That's the reason that's my song.
Right.
I play that very often down there. But yeah, so I started a program about 12 years ago to go in and play music for kids. And this started at the time, 1-year-old had a viral infection. We were in the hospital for a week, which in the grand scheme of things is not a big deal, but it was very eye-opening. And my kids were accustomed for me playing music every day, and it was just quiet. And I thought, this would be really easy. I could come in and play music. And it took me 2 years before they even let me come in and play a note to get over that hump of red tape and figure that out. But for most of that time, I've been going in to room, bedside. Every room's a little bit different. I've come across the most amazing people. Just the patients are amazing. The families are amazing. If you ask me, nurses make the world go round. I mean, they're absolutely incredible what they're asked to do on the front line. But I've that's been going on for 12 years, and it's been the most amazing experience. And I could go on and on and on. So I'm trying to.
That is fantastic. Now, okay, last question.
Yes.
If you could try and attempt one other profession other than the one that you've been in, what would it be?
Yeah, this was a hard one as well. So it was between being a guitar luthier or a vintage motorcycle mechanic.
Love it.
Yeah.
You can get two choices. I love them.
I have two vintage motorcycles that I tinker on all the time, so it's fun.
Cool. Kevin, really appreciate it. It's always fantastic to chat. We could go on for hours. I know you got stuff to do, so great to see you. Speak soon.
Likewise, Andrew. Best to you. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thanks again. See ya.
Take care.